This is the best way to track your investments from multiple platforms. Crypto, stocks, ETFs, all in one place. A place where you can get a summary of your overall portfolio performance as well as your individual investments. However, this goes beyond tracking performance. It's also about analyzing your portfolio allocation, your dividends or crypto interest, as well as a breakdown of your platforms and other insightful statistics. Let's quickly go through this tracker so you can get a glimpse of all its capabilities, and then I'll teach you how to build it step by step. So let us begin with the backbone of this tracker. The Transactions tab is where you enter all the data movement of your investments. For demo purposes, I've populated this tab with hypothetical transactions using platforms from multiple countries and currencies, so you can see how anyone in the world could use this tool to track their investments. Transactions include options to enter cash deposits, buy and sell orders, cross-platform transfers, cash dividends and reinvestment plans, crypto interest, and cash withdrawals. Every movement in one single place that might come handy during investment decisions or our beloved tax audit. Every investment is then automatically transferred to the Portfolio tab. Here you can get a summary of each of your investments with up-to-date statistics, KPIs, benchmark comparisons, actual versus target weights, asset class, and sector details. As we move to the dashboard, you can see an overview of your portfolio combined with dynamic charts and a range of screeners. There's a table that shows top and worst performers, another one with a snapshot of your account value, and a dynamic statistics table that changes based on your period of choice. On the right side, there's an investment screener with classic trendy charts where you can either screen your current investments or potential candidates. It gives you relevant information with even a formulated signal that tells you whether it's time to buy, sell, or hold. There's an individual performance screener to check out current performance and analyze buy versus close price orders. These colorful pie charts visualize your investment allocation per market value, asset class, and sector. As we scroll down, there's an income breakdown section to see any crypto interest earned as well as dividend income. Both of these are interactive based on the year that you choose from this dropdown. Further down the rabbit hole, things get interesting. Although I think everything is interesting, even this dot. This is a platform breakdown that separates multiple calculations per platform. Very useful to reconcile cash balances and to see where you're being the most active or being screwed. Subsequently, a deep dive into the crypto world where you get granular statistics on crypto holdings and their allocation per platform. Finally, the entire tracker is coded to be converted to an overall currency of your choice. This certifies precision and consistency when investing in multiple currencies. For example, if you gained $1,000 in Bitcoin and £1,000 in the FTSE ETF, your overall gain is not $2,000. It should be approximately £1,700 or $2,300, whatever you choose from this magical cell. This tracker offers significant information about your portfolio while storing every investment in one single place. If you would like to skip the tutorial and access this ready-to-use tracker in light, dark, matrix, and cyberpunk theme, make sure to visit my Patreon, which is linked in the description of this video. As always, these include a mobile tab where you can see the same insights in a smartphone interface. Before we start with the tutorial, I'll quickly show you how to enter transactions with a few examples. For those who access this tracker from Patreon, the first thing you'll see is a protected version. You need to click File, and then make a copy into your private account. Now you can edit everything and add your own transactions. So the first thing to do is select all these transactions and remove them by pressing the backspace or delete key. And now we'll just enter a few transactions as an example. So the first thing is to enter cash deposits. And let's buy a stock in US dollars. So we're gonna buy Apple. And then let's say we want to buy an ETF in another country using this platform. We also need to add the cash deposit. So we're gonna buy the FTSE 100 ETF. And now let's buy some cryptocurrency using Binance. So I'm going to buy some Ethereum. Here we enter the asset name that they have in CoinMarketCap. And let's buy a few more cryptocurrencies. Here we're buying Terra Luna. And if you don't know the exact asset name to look for, just go to this website called CoinMarketCap and search the coin that you're trying to add to your tracker. So here's Terra Luna. And as you can see, this is the URL for this coin. So we need to use this name. So here in the asset name, we enter it like this. Doesn't matter if it has capital letters or not. So we've added several assets here. As you can see, if we go to the portfolio tab, you can see that they've all been added here automatically. You can remove these target weights that we entered previously and just enter the target weight that you want. And now if we go to the dashboard, you can see that everything's been added here as well automatically, and you can see the platform breakdown and the crypto breakdown. So now I'll show you how to transfer crypto or stocks from one platform to the other. So let's say you want to transfer half of your Ethereum to another platform. So the first thing to do is enter Binance as a platform because we're transferring it out of here. And for action, you're going to select transfer send. And in quantity, you just enter the number of assets that you're sending to another platform. So let's say we're sending half of the Ethereum that we own. And then in the second line, we enter BlockFi. And here for action, you want to select transfer deposit. So if we go back to the dashboard, you can see here in the crypto breakdown per platform, the 0.5 Ethereum in Binance and 0.5 Ethereum in BlockFi. So that's just a quick example of how you enter transactions, and you can see how everything is automated as soon as you enter the transactions. Now, let's learn how to build this second generation portfolio tracker from the beginning. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is open up Google Sheets. And we're going to start a new spreadsheet. So we're going to open up 4 more sheets because this tracker is going to have 5 sheets in total. And we're going to start with the transactions tab. So I'm going to enter all the column headings, and what you can do is pause the video and enter them exactly where I entered them. So I'm going to merge the title and center it. What we're going to do is select row 2, and then we're going to wrap the text and center in the middle. This way when we make the column smaller, the text wraps and we get a better view. Okay, so before I start entering all the formulas here in these columns, I'm gonna first enter some dummy transactions so that when we enter the formulas, we can see the results straight away. So feel free to enter just a few dummy transactions just to be following the same sequence that I do. So one little detail to add in the date column is the calendar. So what you're gonna do is select from row 3 all the way to the bottom, click data, data validation, and the criteria is date. So whenever you're entering new transactions, you can just double click and you'll be able to see a calendar. And as you can see, the format is different to the one we have at the top. So we're gonna select everything again. And in more formats, you just select the date format that you want. That's much better. Okay, so we're gonna start with our first formula, and this is the total column. Every single formula I'm going to be using in this tutorial will be available in a formula sheet that you can see in the description of this video. So you can easily access it and copy and paste the formulas in the exact same cells where I'm doing it. Just make sure to enter it exactly where I'm entering it because they are linked to specific cells. So you don't want to change the location because if not, the formula will be broken. So as you can see in this formula, I'm using a combination of if statements with if error, depending on the action that we select. So if it's sell or cash withdrawal, we're going to multiply quantity by price and subtract the fees. For all other transactions, we're just going to multiply quantity by price. And you're just going to copy that and drag it down all the way to the bottom. As you can see, even though you dragged it down to the other cells that are empty, it becomes empty, and that's because we're using the if is blank statement, and that's a way to automate the formulas so that you don't have to drag them down in the future. Just before we continue with the other formulas, I'm going to quickly create different lists through data validation in asset class, sector, and action so that you can see the drop down and select what you require. So what you want to do with asset class is select everything. And we're going to go to data validation, and select list of items. And here you're going to enter the list of asset classes that you want. So in this case, I'm just going to choose the list that I used in the demo, and it usually fits everyone's situation. So as you can see, now we get this drop down option where you can simply choose whatever asset class you're doing in each transaction, and it continues further down. So now we're going to do the same with the sector. Feel free to pause the video and copy all of these, or if you require any other sectors, feel free to add them. And finally, we do it for action. So here I'm entering all the operations. Make sure to enter these exactly as I enter them because a lot of the formulas, they use text that links to this, just like the total formula. So we need to make sure that it's spelled correctly. Okay, so now we can move on to the rest of the formulas. Let's work on the rolling costs columns. So these formulas that we're going to enter here, they're to find out the rolling cost of each asset that you buy. And it's really cool because it scans all the transactions and creates that rolling amount that we're going to use later in the portfolio tab. So to get the rolling cost, we use both total cost and rolling quantity to figure out how that cost has been changing, whether you buy or sell or buy more again. So it's a very interesting formula that shows us the precise amount that we need for the average purchase price. So now in the conversion columns, we're going to require that magical cell that I told you about, which is the currency that you choose. First, we're going to link this to the dashboard. So we're going to name sheet 1 dashboard, and we're going to go to column L1 and just enter any currency here. I'm just going to enter USD just in the meantime. And back in transactions, what you want to do in cell Q2 is just simply link it to dashboard L1, and you can fix that with F4. And then in cell R2, you want to enter equals in front of it and then quotations. And then after in quotations again, then the and symbol, and you're gonna select Q2. So now you get a title with the currency that we have. And if you change the currency in dashboard to another one, say euros, the currency changes here and it changes in the title as well. And we're gonna do the same with the total column. So quotations for total, then a bracket with quotations, the and symbol, select that currency, and symbol again, quotations, and then close that bracket. So this formula analyzes the transactions that we have and the currency that we entered. Okay, so this is the first formula to convert the fees. So as you can see, we're using Google Finance and selecting the currency that we have in our transactions with the currency that we have in dashboard. So a combination of if error and if statements to figure out what conversion to use. In this case, because we have US dollars in the dashboard selected, it's going to select the fee that it is if it is in US dollars, and if not, it's going to convert it to whatever we chose. And then the total column does the same thing. Just one little caveat about currency conversions. As you can see, if I change the currency to euros, you would expect the symbol to change to euros, but it stays in dollars. The reason why this happens is because we formatted the currency as dollars. So if by any chance you prefer to have the symbols in another currency besides dollars, just select every row that you want and then change it to that symbol that you want. But unfortunately, it just doesn't change automatically. So you have to just choose the symbol that you want and then just stick to that one. However, the numbers do change. So in terms of the actual figure that you see there, it will change. So you see this one, it's $5 that we were charged in fees in US dollars, but then that was changed to 4.42 euros. And then what we're doing in the date breakdown columns is basically capturing the date that we entered. And what we're going to do is just break it down by day, month, year, and then select a column that's all. I usually do this in a lot of my trackers just to create drop-down cells where you can select a specific month or a specific year, or even if you want all of them, just to scan through different types of information together with a query function. Okay, and there it is. Those are all the formulas that we require for the transactions section. What I'm going to do now is quickly format this tab so that it looks quite similar to the demo. Basically, I'm just going to add a few borders and colors and some conditional formatting that I'll explain soon. Okay, so as you can see, I just added a few colors to the column headers, and I'll show you the conditional formatting that I used. So as you can see, cash is in blue. How I did this was going to format conditional formatting, and I entered this rule. If the text is exactly cash, then make it blue. And then as you can see, every time you enter the transaction, the whole row becomes blue. I used a custom formula for this rule, and it just basically says that if cell A3 or any of the ones below is not empty, then format it in blue. And you must select the range from A to L, because those are the ones that you want to format in blue. I did something quite similar for action. I entered the different texts that I wanted to be formatted in different colors. So transfer send in red, transfer deposit in green, and so on. Likewise, I did something for fees. So if the value is greater than 0, I want it to be red. And I used it in this section as well. For the totals column, I used this format rule. So if the column is not empty, then make it gray and bold. And for all these others, I use this rule that if the cell is not empty, then you make it light gray. A few of them are empty, so after that, what I did was basically select all of these and I just made them gray, because sometimes when they were empty, they would just be white instead of gray. So I prefer when everything looks consistent. One more thing that I did was remove the grid lines. So as you can see, you don't see the grid lines here anymore. And in the transaction section, I just added some borders at the bottom of each cell that is dotted. So I used this one here. And one more thing that I would like to do is actually fix these top rows, because I like to always see the headers of the columns when I scroll down. So what you're going to do is go to View, Freeze, and up to Row 2. So now whenever you scroll, you can still see the column headers. And that is the Transactions tab. So what we're going to do now is go to another sheet and start working on the Portfolio tab. The Portfolio tab is a massive tab, and we're actually going to work on a lot of formulas here. First step here is to just continue adding a lot of rows to the right. So you want to insert rows all the way to BC, because we're going to be using all these columns. If you worked on the first generation portfolio tracker, you would have noticed that we had a portfolio tab and the currency converter tab. In this case, I decided to just combine it all in the portfolio tab. So basically on the right side of this sheet, I'm going to enter the portfolio with the direct numbers. And then on the left side, I'm going to apply the currency conversion. So whenever you access it, you're already going to see all the consistent currencies. So what I'm going to do is enter 55 different types of column headers on row 2. And what I recommend is just for you to pause the video and slowly enter one by one, and then we'll go column by column entering each of the formulas, and I'll explain them. So you want to enter all these column headers. I'm going to expand them so you can read them well. So these go all the way to column AA. In column AB, you're going to enter currency, and then what you want to do is select all the ones that you entered except currency, copy them, and then paste them again next to currency. Like I said, it's basically a copy, but one will have a currency conversion and the other one will be direct. The one that's direct will tell us which currency it is. So what you want to do, similar to what we did in transactions, is select row 2 and wrap the text in the middle and center it, and you can bold it, and I like to have it in size 12. We have this main title here. You're going to enter equals, then quotations. Close those quotations, the and symbol, and we're going to go to dashboard and select that currency in cell L1. And then in cell AB1, not OB1. I'm very keen to see that new TV show. So yeah, in this cell, you're just going to enter this title. This section of the portfolio tracker will be technically incorrect if you invest in multiple currencies, because if you add up all the values or all the costs, you'll get wrong numbers. That's why we have the currency conversion here on the left. But I think it's still worth it to check it out for those people that want to see what is the original cost or the original value based on the currency that you might have. So first we're going to start with the investment portfolio in original currencies. And just before I enter the two formulas that go here, I'm going to enter the tickers, because a lot of the formulas that I'll be entering will come back to column AD just for us to be able to automate the formulas. That formula that I showed you earlier, if is blank. So for ticker, we're going to enter this very simple formula, and it's great. It's called unique. And we're combining it with filter. So we're scanning through our transactions, and we're just going to exclude all the cash asset names that we entered. So as you can see, now you get all the tickers of your transactions. I like to have all the numbers below as size 11. So I'm going to select everything and change it to 11 straight away. Okay, so back to column AB. We're using this formula to scan through the transactions and figure out what currency the ticker that we entered is using. As you can see, there's a special one for stablecoin, because if you're investing with stablecoins, the currency is obviously the name of the stablecoin. So that's why we entered here in this formula. I like to drag down formulas with my keyboard to save some time. So if you want to learn how to do that, I basically enter the first formula, I copy it, then I go to the column on the right or the left, I go all the way to the bottom, go back to the original, and then press Command Shift or Control Shift and the up arrow. Takes me all the way to my first formula, and then you press Command or Control Enter. So it drags down everything with a keyboard. So it's a good way to save some time. To get the asset name for the cryptos that we entered, we just use a simple VLOOKUP function, and if it can't find anything, it's just blank. So there are the asset names that we entered for each of the cryptos. This is what's going to help us scan the current price of the cryptos that are not available in Google Finance. And check out the quantity formula. It is extremely long. I spent quite a lot of time creating this formula, but it works perfectly. It's really good, super interesting. I basically use sum ifs with different conditions. We're adding up the quantities and subtracting them, and we want to get the current quantity that we have if we buy, if we sell, if we transfer it, etc. So as you can see, I'm entering different conditions here. If it's a buy and if it's a stock, add it up, and then subtract if it's a sell and a stock, and then sell an ETF, etc. And the reason why I had to do it so intricately is because we have stable coins, and stable coins just make the whole tracker a bit more complicated, because we want to be able to get the correct amount when we use stable coins to buy other cryptocurrency. So that's why you have to specify which type of asset class it is. If by any chance you have an asset that you bought and then sold, you'll get a message that says sold all. But then if you bought it again, then it'll just update to the current quantity that it is. So it works perfectly fine. And yeah, it's a really interesting formula. Luckily, you don't have to enter it word by word because you can just copy and paste it from the formula sheet. But yeah, it's a very interesting formula that gives you the quantity. To get the average price, we just do a VLOOKUP with the rolling cost that we found in the transactions. And this is a really cool formula that finds the current price of the ticker that you entered. As you can see, we're using firstly Google Finance, the normal one that you use to find the price. If that gives you an error, then we use the second Google Finance formula, and these are for the cryptos that are available in Google Finance. Finally, if that doesn't work, then we use web scraping formula called import HTML to scan the asset name that we have in CoinMarketCap and give us the current price that we have. In cell AH2, we're going to enter just 365, and then we're going to change the format of this. So go to more formats and then custom number format, and you're going to enter this custom number format that we have here and apply it. So as you can see, even though you just entered a number, the column header says day trend, and it's dynamic. If you want to see the 90-day trend, you just enter the number 90 and the column updates to 90-day trend. We're going to use a sparkline function to get a nice little bar chart that shows us the price movement based on the number of days that you entered here. Here we use the change percentage formula to get the daily percentage change of the ticker. I really like the daily change formula because we basically get that change and then multiply by the quantity that we have. So it gives you a real dollar value of how much your value has increased or decreased within one day. Getting the cost is very easy. You just multiply the quantity by the average purchase price. And same with the current value, you just multiply quantity, but this time by the current price. To get the unrealized return on investment, we're using this formula using the current value and the cost. And I call it unrealized because this formula gives us a current quantity. So it would be different if you sold something. And that's why we have one that's called realized profit and loss. For the realized profit and loss formula, we're basically scanning through the transactions and adding up the amount that we sold with the dividends and then subtracting the buy amount and the dividend reinvestment. Then we add up the stablecoin column in case you bought something with stablecoin so that it doesn't count it as a realized gain. And then we add up the cost again. Just a little caveat, the realized profit and loss is not really exactly correct ever because we are using the cost that we have, and the cost basically changes depending on the quantity and average price that you had. It is not the most exact amount, but it is a pretty good guide of how much realized gains or losses you might have. So those are the columns that give us a bit of performance and KPIs. Now we're going to start working on the benchmarks. As you can see, we've got here two columns, the day return and then the benchmark. What you want to do is select AQ and AR in row 3, and you're going to merge it. And then you're going to click this paint format symbol, and then with your keyboard press Command Shift or Control Shift and then the down arrow, and it basically merges all the cells all the way to the bottom. So now we can enter the formula in this merged cell, and basically we're looking at how much the price has changed between now and 365 days ago. And yes, it's a dynamic cell, so you can just change this and you can see how the return has changed. So now we're going to do the same for the benchmark. And that gives us the benchmark return based on the days that you choose in cell AQ2. And now we just calculate the difference to see how our ticker has performed versus the benchmark. Now for the actual weight, we're basically looking at the current value of each specific ticker and then dividing it by the sum of all the other values. That gives us the weight. And for target weight, in this case, we're going to link it to the target weight that we're going to enter later in column U. Because as you might remember in the demo, we enter the target that we might have manually, but we want to see it in the main converted currency portfolio, not in the direct one. To get the asset class, we're just using a VLOOKUP function. And then by using the asset class identifier, we're adding up all the actual weights per asset class, so we can get an asset class actual weight. For the asset class target weight, basically what we're doing is adding up the target weight that we initially entered manually per the individual asset. Everything's going to be 0 at the moment because we haven't entered it in column view. And finally, the sector. It's again a simple VLOOKUP function with transactions, so we can get the sector for each of the assets. So that's the direct portfolio with original currencies. So this section is going to be basically a copy of the right section, but we're going to apply a series of formulas that's going to convert the currencies of each of the columns. That currency change is going to be based on the currency of the actual asset that we bought it with, and also the currency that we choose here in the dashboard. So for asset name, we're going to first just link it to the right side of the table. So just to asset name in column AC. We're going to do the same for ticker and quantity. So these three numbers are going to be the exact same as the investment portfolio in original currencies. Okay, so for average purchase price, we're using this formula here. So basically we're scanning first the currency that is being used on the right side of the table. So as you can see, this one is US dollars. If the currency of our asset is the same as the one we have in the dashboard, we're just going to leave the average purchase price that we have. And if not, we then just make a currency conversion between the currency that we have here and the one in the dashboard. So now we do the same with current price. One thing to note for the current price is that when it's a stable coin, it won't convert it. So for example, if I change the dashboard to euros, you would expect Tether to be 75 cents or whatever the euro is. Unfortunately, it doesn't change because the currency pair that it's using is USDT. So the formula is not really capturing US dollars. Yeah, it's just one of the limitations that this tracker has, which is that it can't convert stable coins. Generally, you just see them in the price that you bought it for. So it's okay for the meantime. Maybe in the future, I'll figure out how to change it to the currency that you choose. But for that, we need a currency conversion between a stable coin and a legacy currency. For the sparkling, we're using the same formula, but we're just changing the location of the cells. So now this one's linked to F2 because here's where we enter the number of days for the day trend. We enter the formula, but it's currently blank because if you go to cell F2, you can see that it's actually a text. So what you want to do is just change to 365. And then we're going to do the same as what we did in this column here. We're going to change the format so that it says day trend after the number that you enter. And it should be here in the recently added formats, but if not, you can just do it from the custom number format and apply the same that we applied previously. So there it is, and it's fully dynamic. If we change it, the trend changes. For the daily change, we're also linking it to the one that we found previously, and we're applying the same currency conversion formula in the daily change. To calculate the cost, we're just multiplying the quantity by the new average purchase price that we found, that it's converted to that currency, and same with the current value. All these formulas are exactly the same as the ones on the right, but we're just changing the location of each of the cells. And one more currency conversion for the realized profit and loss. Now here we are in the target weight column. What I'm going to do first is actually change this title. I'm going to change it to this formula. So I'm using quotations to enter the title and then a formula in between to capture what percentage we actually have entered in the target weight. So as you can see, it's currently 0. And if I start adding any percentage, the title adds it up. So you can see what's your total target weight. So feel free to enter the target weight that you already have for your transactions, or if you have dummy transactions, just enter a few, and then later when you add your own transactions, just enter the target weight that you want for each of the assets. At the moment, I'm just going to enter the ones that I entered in the demo. For the asset class, we're going to link it to the asset class that we found on the right side. And we use this formula to find the asset class actual weight. And finally, the sector, we link it again to the sector on the right side. And there it is, that's the portfolio tab. And as you can see, we had some blank spaces when we worked in the original currencies section. And now, because we have this one linked to the target weight where we enter it manually, all the other actual weight and target weights filled up. So there it is. That is the portfolio tab completed. I will now format this sheet with borders and different colors and conditional formatting. And when I'm back, I'm going to quickly show you how I did the conditional formatting. Okay, so I'm back, and this is the formatted version of the the portfolio sheet. As you can see, I just added some colors and borders to the column headers, and you can see there's some conditional formatting in each of the columns. This one's very simple. So if you select the columns that you want to be formatted and then you go to format, conditional formatting, you can see that we just add a simple format rule, which is if the value is greater than 0, you make it green, and if the value is less than 0, you make it red. So I just selected several columns to apply this to. So the daily change, the realized and unrealized gains, the profit and loss sections, the return on investment, the differences. And for this one here, the target weight, I just applied this rule. So if the cell is not empty, make it blue. That way, when you enter anything here, it just turns blue, so that you can see, first of all, that it's a manual entry column, and also you can just guide yourself where you're missing a number. One more thing that I did was group the columns here. So this one is the original currencies table, right? And we don't really need it that much because this is the main one where you can see everything converted to that single currency. I just leave this one here because first of all, it is needed for the left side table, but also, yeah, maybe you want to expand it sometimes and see what was the actual average purchase price in the original currency. What you have to do is just simply select the columns that you want to group. You right click, and here you select group columns or ungroup them. And then what you're going to get is this little symbol here where you can just click the plus or minus sign to group them or ungroup them. So it's very handy to open up new sections that you have hidden. I'm going to freeze the first 2 rows. So that way when we scroll down, we always see the column headers. And that is pretty much it for the portfolio tab. So now we can move on and work on the dashboard. But before I do that, I'm going to create a filtered portfolio tab. This tab is just going to be an exact copy of the portfolio tab, but we're gonna add a filter across the whole table, and that way you can play with the filters and sort them. The problem is that we can't do it in the original portfolio tab because it will work when you first do it, but if you ever add new transactions, it just messes up with all the formulas and everything just gets very messy. So it is best to just make a copy of it into the filtered portfolio, and here you can then play around with the filters. So it's very simple. You just link it to the first cell, so this one here on the left, A1. We have up until AA. I don't really want to include the other one, I just want this main one. So what you're gonna do is drag this all the way to AA. We need to add a few more there until AA. And now that you have dragged it all the way there, you can just drag it down up to, say, row 150. So now we get a copy of everything that we have in the portfolio. To format it real quick, you just select everything here, click the paint format symbol, go to filtered portfolio, and click this cell here between A and row 1, and everything just formats to the way you had it in portfolio. It added the group of columns, but we don't really have anything here. So what you can do is just select all these and then just delete them. And now we just have the main portfolio. It is an exact same copy. So if I go to portfolio and I make a change here, you will be able to see it in the filtered portfolio there. Now all you have to do is select the whole table from row 2 all the way to the bottom and click the filter symbol. We're going to create a filter, then you can size the columns again. And now that we have resized the columns, you can see that the filter is applied, and now you can play around with the filters. So usually I like to see the current value from highest to lowest. So you just click this little symbol here. So you want to first deselect the blank spaces, click OK, and then sort Z to A. Now we got the assets with the highest current value in the top, and it goes to the lowest one. One thing to note is that if you add more assets in the future, as you add more, they won't appear here straight away. What you need to do is just select this little symbol and then click OK. And you'll see how the asset that you just added will add up to the filtered portfolio. It's just the way to refresh the filtered portfolio tab. This is the way to do it. So yeah, it's a very useful tab here. It's just a copy of the portfolio, and you can play around with the filters to look at the view that you want. Now we're going to continue with the dashboard. So there are quite a lot of tables in the dashboard and several charts and graphs and screeners. So we're just going to do it step by step, one by one. I'll explain each one of them and we'll be done very soon. So I usually leave column A as a space and I start working in column B. So the first thing that we're going to do is enter a title. In cell K1, you're just going to enter currency. And we want to see a drop down of all the currencies that we're going to use. So to do this, you want to go to data validation, and list here the currencies that you want to see in the drop down. So I'm just going to enter a few of the main ones. And as you can see, now there's a drop down button where you can choose any currency and you can easily change it to what you want. So if I choose Australian dollars and we go to portfolio, you can see that now the investment portfolio is in Australian dollars, and we can see all the numbers converted to Australian dollars. Okay, so let's start on the table that shows us the overall portfolio snapshot. So first you want to select cells B3 and C3 and merge them. And we're going to format this all the way to row 6. And here's where we're going to enter the titles of our table. And we have to center them, and looks like we're going to have to center everything. So what you want to do is select everything and just center everything in the middle. So again, we're going to merge D and E in row 3 and row 4. These 4 here, we're going to leave them individually because we're going to have different values here. To get the portfolio market value, we're going to enter this formula. So we're going to add column J in portfolio tab. So if we go to column J, you can see that this one's the current value. So it's just adding up all the numbers to show us what's the current size of our portfolio based on the market value of today. For the total portfolio return, we're going to use the same formula, but now we're going to select column N, which is the total profit or loss. To look at the current return that we have, we're going to add up column L in the portfolio tab. So this one is the unrealized profit and loss. I call it the current one because this column only shows for the assets that are active. So if you sold a few assets before, this one will just be empty. So remember, this is just for the current one, and the total portfolio return is different. So you can see the difference here. We use then this formula to get the return. So it's just the normal return on investment formula, but we just do it with the columns in the portfolio. And to get the daily portfolio change, we're adding up column H in the portfolio, so the one that gives us the change. And to get the percentage change, we just divide the daily portfolio change by current portfolio change. Okay, so now we're going to merge cell B8 and C8, as well as D8 and E8. And then we can just copy them and paste them in line 10. And in cell B9, we're going to use a combination of offset, match, and max functions to get the top performer of today. So as you can see, this is looking at the tickers in portfolio column G. So the one with the largest daily change will be the top performer. And then we just use the max formula to get the percentage. To get the top performer overall, we're using the same formula that we used in line 9, but in this case we're using column K, which is the unrealized return on investment. Okay, so in row 13, we're going to work on the account balances table. So we're going to merge B13 and C13, then paint format and drag it all the way to row 19. So the account value is basically the positions plus the cash. So currently it's going to be 0, but now we're going to fill up these two. So first we're adding all the positions with a market value. And then we use a combination of sum if formulas to calculate the cash. So we're adding up the cash deposits plus the cells plus the dividends minus buy minus cash withdrawals. And then we add up stable coins that are buy. And finally the CAGR, or compounded annual growth rate. So we're basically using the CAGR formula, which is the market value divided by the cost, and then to the power of 1 divided by the number of years that you've been trading since the first transaction. You could use a whole number for the years, but I like to use the year frac function. This one basically creates a year into a decimal, so it's a bit more precise. And even though it's not annual, it works really well for when you've been trading for maybe just a couple of years or 1.5 years. So feel free to change this formula to a whole year if you've been trading for, say, 4 to 5 years and you would like to see that compounded annual growth rate for those whole years. And now we're going to work on the statistics table. So again, we merge B and C, paint format, and drag it down to row 35. Okay, so this whole table is quite dynamic and it changes based on the dates that we choose. So first we're going to select D22 and D23, go to data, data validation, and select date. So we're just going to choose the start date. And for the end date, I'm just going to write down a formula today so that we get the latest date. But if you want to choose the end date manually, you can just delete that formula and then just choose it from the calendar to whatever you want. So basically all the formulas that we're going to be using on this table uses sum ifs. Well, most of them use sum ifs, but something very important is that we're going to capture the dates from the transactions in column C, because that's where we enter the dates, and we want them to be within the dates that we select. So in these two cases, we don't use sum ifs, but we just use count ifs because we want to see the number of transactions instead of a monetary amount. And this one here, I call it the approximate dividend yield because it's not really exact. As you can see, we're dividing the total dividend income by the portfolio market value. And technically, it's not exactly precise because this is the total market value of our portfolio, but not all our stocks provide dividends. So that's why I call it approximate dividend yield. So if you really want to see the exact dividend yield of your portfolio, make sure to check out the dividend portfolio tracker. Okay, so now we're going to move to the right hand side and work on the screener. So you want to merge cell N2 and N3, and then we're going to use the paint format and drag it all the way to column T. And actually we're merging N and O. And then you're going to select N4 and O4, and we're going to merge those two as well. Paint format and drag them down to row 17. So in cell P3, well P2 and 3, you want to go to data validation, and then we're going to select a range. So what you want to do is go to your portfolio and select the ticker column. Remove the row so that it selects everything, click OK. And now we basically get a drop down with all our investments. So it's a cool screener of what you currently own. In the other 4 rows, I'm not adding any data validation. I'm just going to leave them open so that you can enter whichever ticker you want that you might not own in your portfolio, and you can screen them very easily. And now we're going to be entering several formulas that use Google Finance and the specific attribute, so in this case it's name, just for each of these rows so that we can get the information. For the signal, we're using a formula that basically scans through the 52-week high and lows of the specific ticker, and also it looks at the current price. And basically what the formula is saying is that we want it to signal a buy when the difference between the 52-week high and low is 50% or less than the 52-week low. And then the other if statement is that we want it to be a sell when the difference between the 52-week high and low is 85% or higher than the 52-week high. And then if neither of these conditions match, then it's a hold. So now what you can do is select all these formulas that we just entered and then just drag them across to column T. And then to finish off this screener, we're gonna enter a sparkline function. So this is a really cool function that gives us, the classic trendy chart. But the interesting thing about this is that I included if statements. So if the price has gone down after 365 days, it'll be red. And if the price is higher than 365 days before, then it'll be green. And this trendy chart is actually dynamic. So if I change this to 10 days, we can see how the chart now is red because the price of today is lower than the price 10 days ago. So now it's red. And actually it says 365. We're gonna change the format of this to this one here. And now you can just drag these across to column T. One more little caveat about the formula for the signal. Feel free to change the sell and the buy factors. If your investment strategy is different, you might have more risk or lower risk. So you can play around with these percentages with 50% and 85% to see what best fits your strategy. But I just use these numbers as a neutral strategy. Okay, now we're going to work on the individual performance screener. So we want to get a drop down here as well. But what we're going to do is just copy this cell P2 and 3 and then paste it here. And we're going to unmerge it. And you can just remove this one. So now we still get the same data validation, but then in a different cell. And in this table, we're going to use the query function to look up the value that we want based on the ticker that we chose. It's scanning column A, and then we're selecting column I, where column B contains this ticker. And that gives us a cost. Now we do the same for the rest of the values, but we're just selecting different columns. So this is a nice performance screener to have in the dashboard because it saves us time from going to the portfolio tab and looking up the ticker that we want. You can just select the ticker that you want here and you'll be able to see your current performance. Now we're going to move across to cell W20, and what we're going to do here is get the dates that we have bought this asset. Then we're going to get the buy price that we got it for, and then we're going to use the Google Finance function to get the close price based on that date where we bought it. And then we're going to use this information to create the graph later. So we're using this really cool formula called filter, and basically we're scanning for the transaction dates that we currently have in column C, and then we want this filter to choose the dates that have the ticker based on the ticker that we've entered in column D, as well as the transactions that have been in buy only, because we want to get the dates when we actually bought the specific asset. We then use the same formula, but now we select column J, which is the price column, and this will give us the buy price. And finally, we use this really cool formula. We're using query combined with Google Finance. And as you know, Google Finance can give us a list of all the historical prices, and it can be the current price or the highest or the lowest, even the volume. In this case, we're focusing on the close price, and then we're just selecting one single price based on the date that we choose here. So now we're just going to drag it down, and we'll probably drag it down until cell 100. So what you can do is select all the rows after that and then just delete them. And then you can drag down this formula. We're going to work on all the charts once we finish all the tables. So what we want to do is scroll down to cell N34, and we're going to work on the income breakdown tables. Okay, so here we're going to create a year screener. So in cell 036, we want to go to data validation, and then select a range. So we're going to go to transactions, and you want to select column V from V3 all the way to the bottom. So that gives us the years that we've entered transactions. You might get an invalid error message. To fix this, you just need to change it to plain text. So to get the list of months based on the year that we choose, we're going to use a combination of unique and query functions. And we're basically selecting column U, which is the month, where column V contains the year. So in transactions, we enter the breakdown of the month and the year, and that's what that formula is doing. It's selecting the months based on the year that you choose. So if you choose 2020, it'll show you these months: August, September, October, and December. So then we use two sumifs functions to get the cash dividends and then the dividend reinvestment. And then you can just drag this formula down to cell 48. Okay, so that's the dividend income breakdown. Now we're gonna add a small table which will show us the crypto interest that we've earned. So again, we use the combination of unique and filter, and we're gonna use several filter conditions. So we want to get the crypto and stable coins for those that have received crypto interest. And then to get the actual quantity of interest received, we just use a sumifs formula that scans through the transactions based on them being crypto interest in 2021 and the asset. So we can drag this formula down all the way to row 49. So as you can see, if I change this to the year 2020, we didn't earn any interest in 2020, but it is still showing the total crypto interest that we received since we started entering transactions. So it's pretty useful if you want to see those total numbers. And that is the income breakdown. Now we're going to move again to the left side, and we're going to scroll down to row 48, where we're going to enter the platform breakdown. So you want to enter the following headers, but we're actually going to select from net deposit all the way to total dividend income, and we're going to move it one cell to the right because we're going to merge cash withdrawals. So we're going to use the sort and unique functions to get all the platforms that we entered in transactions column A. And then for each of these headers, we're going to use different formulas to scan through the transactions in the portfolio tab so that we can get all the statistics. So you want to drag down all the formulas to row 62. Okay, and there it is. As you can see, we used again the sumifs formula. You've seen it before. We're just scanning through the transactions and we use specific conditions. So in this case, we're selecting the platform as a condition just to get the information that we want. And then we just add up all the totals. Okay, now we're going to scroll down and work on the portfolio per cryptocurrency. So you want to go to cell B64 and enter the portfolio per cryptocurrency. So in this table, we're going to get a list of all the cryptocurrencies and stablecoins that we have. And as you can see, these are not tickers. These are the asset names that we entered. And if we go to the portfolio, you can see that the asset names are here. And in some cases, they're repeated. So we got Bitcoin in US dollars, Bitcoin in Canadian dollars. Same with Cardano. We got one in stablecoin and the other one in US dollars. The purpose of this table is to add up everything per the cryptocurrency that we have so that we can see the total numbers. So it's quite interesting to see how much total Bitcoin you might have, whether it's being bought in stablecoin or in several different currencies. So it's a pretty good table that summarizes everything per that cryptocurrency. And there are no more tables underneath, so we can just drag down the formulas. Oh, and we actually forgot to merge these two. And in row 64, we get the totals. Only the return on investment has a different formula, which gets the total current value and the total cost. So you might be asking yourself, why are we getting the performance indicators for cryptocurrencies, but not for the platforms? So if you remember, in the first generation, I would get the platforms and then each of the performance indicators, so you could see what is the current value of all the assets that you have per platform. The reason why I didn't add it in this tracker is because technically how I did it in the first generation tracker wasn't correct, because a lot of the times you might buy, for example, Apple using Robinhood, but then in the future, what if you buy it using Interactive Brokers or whichever other platform? For me to get the platform per ticker, I was just using a VLOOKUP or index match, one of those. And unfortunately, it doesn't capture both of the platforms that you were using. I could capture the latest one where you bought it. But for example, if you buy Apple in 2 platforms and you keep Apple in those 2 platforms, the formulas using index match or VLOOKUP wouldn't be able to show those 2 platforms. So that's why I decided to exclude the performance indicators for the platform breakdown, and instead I just used several indicators that we can get from the transactions very easily. It is different with the cryptocurrencies because these here, they're basically just the asset names that we choose from the cryptos. So it doesn't matter if you're transferring one or another or selling, there is still an asset name and we can add them up from the portfolio tab because they don't change. Even if you buy Bitcoin US dollars from one platform or another, the asset name is still Bitcoin. That's why we're able to get them here. I'm hoping for the 3rd generation tracker, I'm going to be able to provide more performance indicators per platform, but I want to make sure it's correct and precise. And at the moment, I haven't managed to do it, but trust me, I will get it done in the future. Finally, we're going to work on the last table, and this one is the crypto breakdown per platform. And this is a really cool table that's fully dynamic. You don't need to enter any column or row headers. So as you can see, we're using the transpose, unique, and filter combination of functions to get the platforms where we're buying crypto or stable coins. So if in the future you buy using another platform, it'll show up here automatically. And same with the list of cryptocurrencies that we bought. So here we're using this very long formula, not as long as the other one that I showed you in portfolio, but it's still quite long. Again, we use a combination of sum-ifs functions just to add and subtract different values that we get from transactions so that we can get the final quantity that we have in the specific platform. So with this one, you can just drag it to the right and then all the way down. If by any chance in the future you have more platforms, feel free to just keep dragging the formula until all your platforms and cryptocurrencies fit. Wow, so that's a lot of information. It looks kind of messy right now because we haven't formatted. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly format everything, add some borders and colors and conditional formatting, and I'll be back to explain what I did. Okay, so here it is. Looks way better now. I'm just going to delete this sheet. We don't need it. And I'm also going to fix row 1. That way you can scroll down and still see the title, the currency dropdown, and the trendy charts. Because who doesn't want to see trendy charts all the time? We are just missing the charts, so now we've got the space ready for them and we're going to start with them. Before I start with them, let me just quickly tell you the formatting that I created. So besides the borders and the background colors, I added some conditional formatting, and it's quite similar to the portfolio and transactions one. For many of the values, if the value is greater than 0, make it green. If it's less than 0, make it red. I also created some conditional formatting for the signals row. So make it green if it says buy, red if it says sell, and yellow if it says hold. I almost said huddle. I added a color scale in the dividend income. So the largest values are shown in a dark blue and the lowest values are shown in a light blue. One more format rule that I added to these 3 tables at the bottom is the cell is not empty. So I selected these cells and these cells and these cells and these cells. And then I just entered this rule. If the cell is not empty, then make the background blue. So that way, whenever you add something else here, it'll change to blue. So it's quite a dynamic and automatic table. Okay, we're almost done. Let's start with the first chart. So you want to go to Insert, Chart, and we want a column chart with a data range from portfolio, and let's just select everything all the way to AA. Remove those numbers so that we select everything and click OK. Just going to remove all the series, use row 2 as headers. For the x-axis, we want the ticker. In the series, we want to get the unrealized return on investment. So now we get a nice column chart that tells us the percentage gain or loss of each of our investments. For the second chart, we want a combo chart, so it's this one here. And we're going to select the same data range that we selected for the first chart. In the x-axis we want the ticker, and in the series we want the current value and the cost. For the third chart, we're going to select a pie chart, and we're going to use the same data range. So we want the label to be the ticker and the value to be the current value, also known as market value. The fourth chart is going to be a pie chart as well, with the same data range. We're using the same one for all of them. It's a very useful table, this one. So in the label, you want to select asset class, and in the value, the current value. Looks very messy, so you just want to click aggregate so we get the unique values. Okay, another pie chart. And we're using a different data range. We're going to go to the account balances and select the positions and the cash. For the label, we want B14 and B15, and for the value, we want D14 and D15. So this one just shows us a pie chart of the cash versus the positions. And one more pie chart that will visualize the sector breakdown. So we're selecting the portfolio tab as the data range again. And for the label, we want the sector, and the value, we want the current value. Again, we're going to aggregate the sector. Okay, I think that's enough pie charts for now. Okay, so we've got 6 charts. Let's work on the 7th chart, which will be the individual performance screener. We're going to select a line chart, and the data range is going to be W to Y, and then just drag it down all the way to the bottom. We're going to select the date for the x-axis, and then the series are going to be buy price and close price. So this chart will be fully dynamic based on the ticker that we choose and the amount of buys that we've had together with the buy price and the close price. Okay, let's work on the dividend income chart. This should be the last one. So we're going to select an area chart, and for the data range, we want to select Q and R all the way to row 48. X-axis months, series, dividend income. Wow, we are done. Let's just remove the grid lines, and you can hide these columns. When you hide them, you'll get this message. Make sure to click include data so that this chart still includes the data from those rows, even though we hid them. And that is it. That is the portfolio tracker 2nd generation. So I hope you enjoyed this video and find this tracker very helpful for you to track your investments. Please send me feedback, let me know what you think, and we'll start preparing the 3rd generation with better improvements. Looking forward to the next one. Bye bye. This is Planet Finance. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, happy learning.